Thank you for tuning in to our very first episode of Escape the Mind Reviews. My name is Brandon, and I am joined always by the Soulless Samurai. We are here tonight for our very first episode. We are going to review Castle Rock, Episode 1 of Season 2. The name of the episode is Let the River Run. And right before we get into that, Soulless, how we doing tonight?
I'm doing well, B. Something feels a little different, and I guess it's because we won't be talking about aliens tonight. But I'm excited to jump into the Stephen King universe.
That's right. And if you don't know what he's talking about, we have another podcast called Beyond Explanation, where we talk about things of that sort. And so if that sounds like it might be something up your alley, check it out. And so we're going to jump into the Stephen King universe here tonight with Castle Rock, which is on Hulu if you want to check it out. This is going to be Season 2, Episode 1. So if you have not watched that, this is your one warning. Stop now, go watch it, and then come back, and then we're going to go through the whole discussion together, and basically we're going to break down the episode and have a little chat about everything that happened. Now, I myself am about 3 books into The Dark Tower. My friend Soulless has read pretty much the vast majority of the Stephen King library. Would that be an exaggeration?
No, other than most of the more recent stuff, I've read pretty much his whole back catalog.
All right, so we're going to get into it. We're going to talk a little bit about those things as we run into them, little Easter egg action here and there. So if you enjoy those things, definitely make sure that you like and you subscribe. Again, Escape the Mind Reviews, our very first episode. So I'm definitely super excited to get that started and bring it to you folks. And just definitely make sure you kick back and relax and enjoy the fun. Again, last chance, if you haven't watched Episode 1 of Season 2, get out now. So the show opens up with young Kathy Bates stumbling through the forest with a file folder box that has the Ravening Angel written on the side of the box. And young Kathy Bates is kind of disheveled, having a little bit of that odd walk that she's known to have, and covered in blood. Some of it dried, some of it not. So it must have been a large amount of blood, whatever it was.
Yeah, we can only assume.
And it's interesting because she's definitely out of it, like so much out of it that it appears that just hearing the river that she's near kind of like snaps her back to reality momentarily. And then she goes down towards the river with that file folder box that she has.
Yeah, they definitely just throw you right into something shocking.
So right before they pan away from that particular scene, we can see the box, which again had the Ravening Angel kind of scrawled on the side, which we don't really know what that is at this point. We see the box kind of shake. So there's definitely something in the box, but we're not quite sure what it is.
I hope it's kittens.
Kittens? Would that bring you back? If you're in the middle of the woods, you're covered in blood, and you don't really know what's going on, you got a box of kittens, would that make you happy?
I think so.
Yeah?
Yeah, definitely help snap you back to reality a little bit.
So I wonder, I wanted to ask you, do you feel like this first scene is as dramatic as the first season? So in Castle Rock Season 1, the first scene, just to kind of take you back, is where we had the warden, John Locke in Lost, is sitting in his Lincoln or his Cadillac, don't remember which one, and he has tied a rope around a tree, which he then fastens around his neck, and then he drives off the side of the cliff. Definitely 2 different times where I feel like it brings you in, because clearly some things have gone down.
Definitely.
But yet, do you feel like it's as dramatic as it was with Season 1?
Season 1 is definitely very dramatic and just straight out of the chute. I feel like this episode leaves more questions off the rip.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you have a little bit of like where the guy, when he goes off the cliff and all that, it definitely leaves you with like, whoa, what? There's clearly some things that have gone down in this guy's life.
Right.
But I feel like they do leave even more kind of open because they give you, I mean, he had the sticker on the back of his car. He had a couple little Easter eggy things to kind of give you ideas as to what was going on. Mm-hmm. But yet it wasn't as much like with her. You really just had the file folder box and the Ravening Angel on the side, which we don't have any ideas what that means at this point. So I just felt like it didn't hit as hard as the first season did right off the bat, but okay. I felt like it was still good. Like I'm still happy. I just didn't feel like the first season I feel like was immediately just like, boom, in your face. With this, I feel like it is, but just not as, and you can't, do you want shock factor off the go each and every time?
It definitely sets the stage. And I guess I like this one more because I have more connection to that character. And I knew going in that was Annie Wilkes. Knowing what happens later on in her life, it definitely sparks a lot of questions right away. Like, okay, we're going to find out a lot about this girl.
So Annie Wilkes is basically this is the character from Misery that was played by Kathy Bates in the movie.
Right.
And you and I were talking about this earlier because I kind of wonder, because there seems to be some debate about this online, is if this is a younger version of that same person, like the events of Misery are yet to happen to her, or if it's just that character but younger and taken out of that universe entirely and just plopped down in this point in the point in time in which the show is.
Yeah. Well, I guess they make no bones about it from the get-go that it's Ann Wilkes, like in the tagline and all for that.
Yeah, and all the trailers and everything. That I don't think that was anything anybody didn't know going in.
But yeah, I guess it is taking place in a relatively current day. And in Misery, she's 44, and that takes place in the 80s.
Yeah, so I feel like it's more of like that character just at a younger point in her life, taken out of that story entirely. Like, I don't think it's a guarantee that those events are yet to happen to her in her current life.
Right. Stephen King is big on alternate timelines and a little slippage in reality here and there. So, I mean, are we supposed to suspend belief on some of this stuff, or is it actually just a completely different timeline?
So in the next scene, we see young Kathy Bates appear to be kind of taking medication from the hospital, and you hear Carly Simon's Let the River Run play in the background. And one of the first things that I noticed was the way that the young Anne, or Kathy Bates character, as I say jokingly, the way that she walks. Like, her gait is so odd. Like, I would imagine just running into this person in everyday life, I would be like, there's something a little off about them.
Yeah, you give them a wide berth. It's just that rambling, almost psychotic gait.
Yeah.
You notice right away.
And on top of that, like, she's just like covered in pigs, all her scrubs. She has like little pigs everywhere, which I think is a nod to the Misery movie.
Yeah, the pig from the movie is named Misery, right?
Yep.
And she's a huge fan of pigs.
So there's also a story that the town, Jerusalem's Lot, was named after a pig that was named Jerusalem that got out of its pen and went wild in the woods in the town. So that might be another little nod to a little Stephen King Easter egg there.
Nice. Yeah, the Carly Simon song is perfect. It even has a line about New Jerusalem.
Oh, okay, perfect. Yeah, now that you mentioned that, I remember hearing that. So right after that, we get to meet her daughter, who we perceive as her daughter, Joy, who is waiting for her in the car in the parking lot, kind of doodling in a notebook that has the title, The Laughing Place, written on the front of the book. And the Laughing Place is a reference to where, like, the Kathy Bates character would go when she was, like, in a super deep depression. It's also a reference to the Disney show, Song of the South, with Brer Rabbit.
Well, we don't talk about that anymore.
Oh, sorry. We'll move on. So young Bates and Joy exclaim that they're going to the Laughing Place, and it's a good scene to kind of give you some idea as to what brought these characters to Castle Rock. You can kind of see that young Kathy Bates is putting on a show the best that she can for her daughter as she kind of moves from hospital to hospital, stealing the medication. We don't really know if it's like for her to sell or for her to take, but she's clearly nabbing pills each and every hospital that she goes to.
Yeah, she's on a mission.
And it definitely seems that they've clearly been on this trip for some time, because by the time they get to Castle Rock, her daughter is definitely older than she was when they started this trip.
True.
And you also see that young Anne has been changing license plates as they go. So I'm kind of wondering if she did this because of the fact that she's stealing the medication to kind of like further keep her under the radar as she moves from hospital to hospital, or if she's actually like running from something.
Ah, true. Well, if you want to be good at it, you only commit one crime at a time. So she's definitely in over her head.
That's a good rule. Just one at a time.
Yep.
I like that. So just as they are outside of the town, young Kathy Bates, or young Anne, starts searching for the medication in her car. You can see that like once it hit a certain time, she would like knew it was her time to take her pills. And she's like fumbling around in the car to try to find her pills. As she's driving past like signs for Shawshank, and you see the town signs out front that say, join us for the Castle Rock 400-year anniversary. And they're like, each part of that is on a different sign that's kind of attached to scarecrows that you would see as you drive past. Like, join us for the Castle Rock. It was definitely interesting. So there was a creepy scarecrow that was in the woods, or in the road rather, that Anne didn't see because she's stumbling through her purse looking for the medication. She goes over it. It pops her tire. flips the car, which is something I mean, I've had a lot of flat tires in my life, never flipped a car.
Yeah, it escalated quickly.
Yeah, it escalated super quickly. We move forward at that point about a week later, and then we get introduced to the fact that there's a large group of people that from Somalia that have moved to Jerusalem's Lot, and they've been purchasing land and property in the area, which hasn't sat very well with like the InfoWars local populace that we hear Ace.
Well
Yeah, we see Ace Merrill, who's listening to like an InfoWars-esque radio station. It sounds a lot like a Alex Jones type sort of deal.
And just as fake or fictional.
So we can see there's like a Somali mall in a warehouse that they've been paying, and it appears like the people in the warehouse have been paying like either like due money or protection money or something of that nature. And one of the vendors let the collector guys know that they were kind of moving to a competing mall, and that's currently being built. We can see that it's not the guy. It looks like Ace Merrill, who's the guy who was played by Keith Sutherland in Stand By Me.
Based on the Stephen King story, The Body.
He's basically like the head honcho of the collections crew, it looks like. Mm-hmm. And so they're kind of rolling through. The guy lets him know that this is his last week. He's putting in his notice. And so the Ace gives him his money back and is basically like, yeah, you're not going anywhere, buddy. You can hold on to this, but you're going to stay right here.
Right.
So right after that, we can see that Joy and her mom have been staying at the Stargazer Lodge while their car is being repaired. And the lodge is run by Ace Merrill. That's young Kathy Bates tells Joy not to trust. She's telling her that with men like that, nothing is for free. And I think the term dirty bird was thrown around a couple times in there.
Yes, for sure.
I love the lingo. It's like that. It's when she can really kind of channel that Kathy Bates style character, when with the wording and the
Christmas.
Yeah, the vocabulary. It's awesome.
Yeah, and definitely a nod to the book.
So Joy mentions to her mom that she hasn't had her medicine in about a week, and she knows that her mom needs her medication and isn't really all there without it. We can tell maybe now that the pills are definitely for her, and so it seems that she's been kind of medicating herself through kind of getting temporary nurse jobs. And I was wondering, like, how long does she stay at those jobs before she swipes the pills? Like, ASAP, as soon as possible, she gets in, gets them, gets out? Or does she stay there for a while, make a little bit of money, and then take the pills? I guess it would all depend on your supply, right?
Yeah, true. Well, I guess she does need income, especially if they're fleeing all the time and staying at random places. So
yeah, I mean, she has someone that she's got to provide for, and they got to pay for rent at the places that they're staying. They're not just going to live in the car all the time.
Very true. But yeah, how long can you get away with that? And we're kind of not sure if she's a legit nurse or not. It's kind of vague, and she definitely, you can't trust her word. So
yep.
And I think see her do any nursing either.
Well, you see her prop up some people's beds, and you see her like pretty up the charts to make it look like they're more presentable. She probably takes some blood pressure somewhere, I'm sure. I mean, like little things that anybody would kind of know how to do. You don't see her like tap a lung or anything. So she goes in for her nursing job, and you can see that she tries to kind of get the medication just like she did before and get back on the road. But the tough part is that this hospital has had issues with people stealing pills, and they have kind of like a electronic lock on their medication. So it doesn't take long, and young Anne, or Kathy Bates, is starting to show signs of losing her cool. And once getting to the hospital, she has to go she basically goes complete OCD on the place, making sure that every chart is perfectly neat and that everything is in its place. And basically, while she's doing this, probing for ways that she can find her way into the medicine cabinet. After a first day and going through, basically, as we were saying, doing like very little nurse work and just making things tidy, she leaves the hospital without the medication and is starting to look like she's starting to hallucinate. As she nears her car, she starts to hear what sounds like a typewriter, and then you see a man standing in the middle of the street where like a bus honks, and then the guy's gone. And this was kind of your first unreliable narrator thing that pops up where you can go, oh man, was that guy really there? Was he not? Was this just in her head? She's clearly needs medication for something. So is she having hallucinations? We don't really know. During this particular point in time, Joy gets cabin fever and starts to leave the cabin, and she starts to meet some of the other kids living at the Stargazer Lodge. And Joy mentions that she doesn't really have like a cell phone, and she isn't really allowed on the internet. And we kind of mentioned before, like the kids, kind of little ragtag crew, could be the same as like the Stand By Me kids or the Loser Club from It, right?
Yeah, it's definitely a common theme in Stephen King movies. The Body as well, Stand By Me, group of kids out looking for a dead body.
So I wonder if we're going to get that at some point. I wonder if it's going to move into are we going to go try to find a body sort of deal, or if the kids are going to have their own story.
Yeah, or have to fight some evil entity.
Yeah, a little bit of a Stranger Things vibe.
Ah, yeah, there you go. Which the Duffer Brothers definitely state that King is a huge influence.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that as well. I feel like it's been equally as strong in almost every season, but the first season was definitely the best.
Yeah. I do like that show a lot, though.
After Anne gets spooked, we find out that she's going to check on her windshield of her car to see if her car is ready, and we see the two Merrill brothers discussing Anne's situation. So we meet Ace and Chris Merrill for the first time. Ace clearly suspects that Anne is hiding something because her license plates don't match her VIN number. We mentioned a little bit earlier, you might know Ace Merrill and the Merrill brothers from The Body or The Stand, or Stand By Me, rather.
He was also in Needful Things.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
what was that about? In very brief, sorry to put you in a little hole there.
Yeah, basically a creepy entrepreneur moves into town and starts selling things to the local people, but everything that he sells them kind of comes with a price.
Ah, fun times.
Yeah, and Ace is always an entity of evil, or just an agent of evil. It's palpable.
Okay, yeah. So we've also find out that the guy that's running the competition mall, if you will, the competitor, is the stepbrother of the Merrills. I wasn't quite sure at this point if Ace and Chris were related directly to Pop, who we're going to meet in a minute, or if they were like someone that was like loosely related to him or not. But we'll find out more about that later, I'm sure.
Right, yeah, they all share the last name Merrill, but they both call him Pop. So we're not quite sure.
So while walking home, Anne starts to hallucinate again. She starts hearing that typewriter again, and she turns to see the guy from the road from earlier, but you can see that there's clearly like blood running up his face. And when Anne runs in terror, she ends up running right into Joy playing with the other kids. Anne basically starts to have a mini meltdown. She grabs Joy, brings her back to the house, and starts to lecture her. And this is where you really see her kind of lean into the character. And you hear her say that she would literally throw herself between Joy and anyone who is trying to get her to accept less in life. And it appears Joy knows her mom's slipping without her meds and asks her, hey, is this an emergency? Like, do we need to talk about this?
Right, yeah, very dramatic.
So Anne does mention during her rant hearing about boys disappearing into thin air, which I thought was pretty interesting because this could be a nod or a reference to the Deavers from the first season.
Yeah, she says, I've heard things, massacres, kids vanishing into the air. Definitely a reference to season 1, but also could apply to many Stephen King stories.
Okay, so it's happened in other places as well.
Yeah, Derry typically has kids disappear in intervals.
Anne basically locks herself in her room, and she starts to listen to a book on tape. Anne goes on the computer, and you can see that she logs into like the local Wi-Fi. When she's going through her email, you can see it's jam-packed with like self-help, meditation, yoga, how to deal with mood swings, all these different things that you can see. She clearly has tried to do the best she can to manage whatever this issue is that she has.
No notices from past employers, though?
That's a good point. Or, hey, where's that medication?
Yeah, right.
So then she searches the name Annie Wilkes, which appears to be her real name, as we talked about earlier, and she's wanted for murder by the FBI. And we can tell that it looks like from the picture that she's been on the run for a while as well. So possibly that ties into the whole changing the license plates and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, it definitely makes you wonder what they're running from.
So we then learn that the Somali gentleman Abdi and the doctor from Anne's hospital are brother and sister. and it appears they were adopted by Pop Merrill, played by Tim Robbins in the show. He mentions getting the doctor through Harvard Medical School, and it came across as she kind of has a deal with him that she doesn't really want to know things, but yet then he kind of facilitated her education and he paid for it, but yet she now has the ability to like run the hospital there. So I feel like there's a little bit of like a relationship kind of deal. He does stuff for her. She kind of has an idea of what he does, but she just wants to be left out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And Tim Robbins, of course, was in Shawshank Redemption. Also the character of Pop Merrill that he portrays first appeared in the novel Sundog by Stephen King.
Him and his Emporium Galorium, the store that he runs. And I think it's the auto body shop next door as well.
Yeah, that's the people who towed the car when she went into the accident where she flipped the car after she popped the tire.
Right.
It was towed by the people at the Emporium Galorium.
Mm-hmm.
So the next scene has Anne really struggling to hold it together. And in a moment of desperation, she shuts off the power to the hospital to see if she can get into the medication room with the electronic lock. When she's on her way to the medication, she's greeted by the man from the road with the blood going up his face. Mm-hmm. And she stumbles down the hallway to get away from him. And just as he's about to descend on top of her, the lights flash back on in the hospital, and you can see the male nurse there, and he's basically asking if she's all right. So she lies her way out of the situation like, no, I'm fine. I fell. And she walks away, and she finds out that the doctor left her key card at home for the medication. And she's resourceful, man. It takes her no time at all to hop on the computer, find out where that doctor lives, and she's going to go to their house and get that key card for herself.
Yeah, pretty scary.
I mean, you wonder how desperate she has to be in that particular situation with seeing. Now we know she's hallucinating, I would assume, at this particular point. So, and she's treating herself for that. And she knows she's getting worse. She has her daughter at home, and her daughter's like, did you get your pills? Did you get your pills? Get your pills. So it's like you have that pressure all the time of trying to make sure that you follow through. And now you have this hurdle that you've never had to climb through before. It's crazy to see how in those moments, it doesn't take her any time at all just to be like, nope, I'm doing whatever it takes.
Yeah, it's sheer desperation. And you thought like shutting the power off in a hospital was as desperate as it was going to get. But then she takes it a step further.
Yep. So they flash to a scene of Joy, who's gifting a drawing that she made to a friend that she made at the Stargazer Lodge. And this would kind of precipitate her friend gifting her back a cell phone a little bit later in the episode.
A little uneven trade, but all right.
Well, I mean, it wasn't a cell phone that she's using. I mean, and it looked
true.
like she had like a whole shoebox full of cell phones, like old cell phones. So I'm pretty sure she could live without it.
This girl's got burner phones.
Joy sees Joy when she goes out to drop off the drawing and she goes to walk back to the lodge. It's nighttime at this point, and she sees Ace, and he's in his house, and he's concocting a Molotov cocktail. And he also has like a pistol in his hand and some different things going on where you can tell he's up to some not so great stuff. And he then sees that Joy has overseen what he's doing and basically goes over and slowly closes the blind. But you know that's not going to be where it ends.
Too late.
Another thing he wanted to mention from earlier is that when Joy's watching TV in the house, when she's going through the cabin fever scene, they do mention that they're reopening Shawshank Prison.
Oh, nice catch.
So the next scene has Anne breaking into the doctor's house for her key. And during the break-in, Abdi comes home, and just about as he's about to find her, like he starts going up the stairs with his gun, that's right when Ace chucks the Molotov cocktail right through the front window. And he uses more than one. And they're like pretty close to family. I'd hate to see what he would do to somebody that's not even tangentially related to him.
Yeah, right.
During the fire and the confusion, Anne's able to slip her way out of the house with the key card.
Everything's coming up Millhouse.
Yes. And so that was one of the things that I was kind of surprised by. Like, wouldn't you let a little bit of time pass by before you go right back to the hospital to get your pills? Like, even if it was a few hours, she goes back to the hospital wearing the exact same clothes as she had on from the day before.
She might be crafty, but she's not patient.
Yeah, exactly. And she goes right for the door, man. So it's funny how we're in some areas, she's crazy resourceful, but then in other areas, once she has that thing that she was looking for, she just overlooks certain other aspects. And it's like, I mean, I guess you play that game when you go through committing crimes, right? It's like, how many things can you account for along the way?
Yeah, definitely. All of them a roll of a dice.
Oh, and the other thing I wanted to mention is if you're Ace, why would you drive your tow truck that has your name emboldened on the side of the truck to commit a crime? Wouldn't you steal a car or use some other type of vehicle that doesn't have your name in huge letters on the side of it?
Yeah, he either thinks he's above the law or he just has zero chill.
I mean, that's a good point. I guess he figures he has Pop on his side, but do you really think Pop can control the local law enough that you can just chuck Molotov cocktails through people's front door?
Yeah, right. Committing hate crimes. Bold move.
So Anne appears to immediately take the key into the hospital and to try to attempt to get the drugs. And meanwhile, Merrill is taken in for questioning by the cops. Ace, that is. So Anne gets caught in the middle of her taking the medication by Nadia, and she tries to lie her way out of it, but Nadia immediately calls her out. And Anne kind of breaks down and tells her about her condition, but she found a way to treat herself with this cocktail of psych meds that she takes. And the doctor, I'm not quite sure why. Maybe it's really hard to find good help in that area. She did mention that Anne was doing good work for her. So maybe our underestimation of her skills was a little off.
Yeah, that's fair, I guess.
But so the doctor then basically said that she's going to try to help her out with off-brand stuff or doing whatever she can to lie, say she didn't get something so that she can help her out. As long as she works at the hospital, she'll make sure she's covered. And she also says, at least you're not taking oxy, you're taking lithium. So she's like, if everybody who took oxy took lithium, we'd have a much happier world.
Yeah, it's really hard to get your mental health taken care of sometimes, and she appeared really desperate.
Well, I mean, she made a good point, the fact that she had a kid, and if she said that she takes these things and she couldn't perform her job, and then they might even take her kid away, which would obviously make things even way worse. And it's not like Nadia knew the extent of everything up to this point, so it's going to be hard for her to make that judgment call. So I think she does the best I don't think most people would give her the drugs, but I don't think it's like I don't think it's the worst thing in the world that she did that.
She obviously cares.
Yeah, exactly. So once Anne gets home and she has had her fix, if you will, and on all those fun things, she tells Joy, like, hey, maybe we don't have to leave after all. I have this reoccurring stash that I can pull from that's going to hopefully keep me balanced, and maybe we can stay here and make a life of it.
Got this sweet hookup.
Yeah, right. So she gives Joy some money for drawing paper, and Joy heads into town. So later that night, things are about to go down, and Ace decides to let himself into Anne and Joy's house. Anne was in the kitchen scooping some ice cream, and Ace tells Anne that he was piggybacking on the internet searches, and he basically knows that she was on the run for murder. He basically then decides to say, hey, Joy saw something she shouldn't have seen, and if she doesn't keep her mouth shut, I'm going to let everybody know your secret.
Ooh, good move. Checkmate.
Was it, though? Because it doesn't take her very long before she dismantles him with an ice cream scoop.
Sorry, check. And checkmate.
So it definitely escalated quickly.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't see her breaking him down so immediately, if you will.
Literally right to the throat.
Yeah, and
the hard way.
It doesn't take very long at all before she, you see her shed a tear, and then it just she just clicks into cleanup mode, and she starts doing everything she can to scrub the floor and get the body in the back of the Jeep. She even jumps up and down on his stomach with her knees to pop out the ice cream scoop. Everything that she has to do to make sure she gets all the evidence to clean everything up.
Yeah, definitely very calculated. Maybe she's done this before.
I mean, you can tell that it affects her to have to kill him, but it's almost immediately after she just goes right into overdrive.
Yeah. Just business. And we get to see that compulsive cleaning.
And yeah, there you go. And I wonder if she must be really strong, man. One, for her to take him out with the ice cream scoop, and two, for her to even get his dead body in the back of the Jeep. Dead weight is probably one of the hardest things to move. You always hear about that in those 48 hours shows.
True.
So it's how do you assume that this woman, who's not very large of frame, if you will, she's not, she doesn't look like she's jacked by any means. No. And she's able to carry this guy who's, I would assume he's over 6 feet, right?
Yeah, but I mean, I'm sure the crazy adds a lot of strength. The desperation, also adrenaline.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
You know, like they don't know, like she doesn't know her own strength even. Like, or you hear like a friend of mine was in a car accident and their brother, like with adrenaline, was able to rip a car door off to like get the brother out of the car.
Holy crap.
So like people who are under extreme circumstances like that, when adrenaline kicks in, people can do some wild stuff, man.
Yeah, definitely. She just wants to take care of business. That's all she's about.
So the episode basically concludes with Anne in the Jeep moving the body, listening again to the Carly Simon song that we were listening to in the beginning of the episode. And one of my absolute favorite moments of the episode is her pulling up to the boat dock and she's about to like go to the back of the Jeep to get the body out. And when she opens the back of the Jeep, there's the fisherman standing there and he's like staring at her like, and she's like so out of it that she doesn't even see him to the last moment. And then she's just like, shit, shuts.
Nothing to see here.
Yeah, exactly. She shuts the door, gets back in, and then takes off. And I was just like, that's hilarious. Like, because you know, you would be so overtaken that you'd probably give a glance. But this guy's like out in the water a little bit in his boots. Like, I'm sure it would have not somebody you would have saw immediately.
Yeah, especially with that tunnel vision.
So as she's pulling away from the fisherman, she sees the concrete truck and gets the brilliant idea that she's going to leave Ace's body at the Somali mall that everybody's been fighting over, which I think is a pretty brilliant idea. So Anne gets out, she digs a hole, drags Ace's body down from the car. Again, superhuman strength here. And then she drops the body down to the ground and starts to cover it with the shovel, and you can kind of see the ground starting to crack, and then she starts to fall into a hole. Mm-hmm. The episode ends on a literal cliffhanger.
Yes.
Gotta love it.
Surrounded by bats, beetles. You're not really sure. Everything just kind of erupts, and it's obviously a cave down there.
Yeah, so you wonder if this is like the Jerusalem's Lot. Are we going to get vampires at this point? Like, where are we going to go from here?
Yeah.
And that was one of the things, like with season 1, you really only had the kid in the cage that was the supernatural element of the show. You didn't really have other than like alternative dimensions. You didn't really have other like supernatural things. So are we going to get that right off the jump? Second episode here, or is it going to be something that you think might happen a little bit later? Like, do you think it's going to be vampires or something just in the supernatural realm?
That's very hard to say. Obviously, Salem's Lot is a place where supernatural things happen, and you know the kind of the epicenter of Salem's Lot in the book is the Marston House, and it is in its own right an agent of evil. Or just has its own way of attracting evil. So yeah, we're dealt a lot of things in the Stephen King universe all at once, and these worlds are colliding. So it's got a super nerd like me very excited for episode 2.
Awesome. Yeah, me as well. So what would you rate out of 10 the first episode of season 2 of Castle Rock?
I'd say a 7.
I would say the same.
Okay.
Yeah, I liked it. I thought it could have been perhaps a little faster paced is really the only thing I could say would be my fault on it. But other than that, I mean, it really did cover a lot of ground, all things considered. You got some background on where the characters, what brought them there.
Right. That
some stuff kind of, some things went down leading up to that even that we don't know about yet. Because that initial scene was her, but much younger. Was what was shaking in the box joy? We don't really know. Yeah. It could be something else entirely. Kittens even.
Yes. We can only hope. Yeah, you have all these very familiar things. If you're a fan, and then also all of these unknown elements and lots of questions. So I'd maybe even give it an 8 just for the way it tantalizes a little. I'm reserving judgment until I see how it plays out, because often Stephen King is very good at slowly setting a pace to something, and you get very attached to the characters and you develop these questions, and not everything is fed to you. So I didn't really expect it to be very fast paced. So I'm curious to see where it's going to lead.
Yeah, definitely. And I can see even with the first book of The Dark Tower that it was something that was always kind of building and building and building. And I'm now going into the 4th book, and I think it was really till the 3rd book when I was like, all right, now that we're really getting on track here. Yeah. But I was never bored. The same as with this. I mean, up to the first episode, There wasn't any point in time where I was like, all right, let's get going. Like, it could have been a little faster, but even that I feel like is a little nitpicky. So it wasn't like the best television I've ever seen, but it was good.
Speaking of the Dark Tower, Father Callahan is a character in Salem's Lot, and he's one of my favorite characters in the Dark Tower. I'm very curious if he is going to pop up.
It'll be cool, like, to get to see if they get a chance to have him come in and what he might do. And I wonder, because we haven't seen any reoccurring people up to this point from season 1.
Very true.
So I wonder how long it's going to take, if we're going to get some Deavers or if we might get some other people that might pop in. If we get young Deaver or old Deaver, I think it might be more possible to get the young Deaver, since he was the one who actually went through Salem's Lot, or Jerusalem's Lot rather, in the first season.
They did tease that a little bit.
Yeah, so I would imagine he's got to pop up at some point.
I'm also really curious to see if Jackie Torrance shows back up, because she's like the self-proclaimed historian of Castle Rock.
Yeah, definitely.
Fit in here. I mean, there has to be a reason. She had a very, very small story arc in season 1, but seems to be a pretty instrumental character in Castle Rock. So
Dr. Sleep just came out. I haven't had a chance to see it yet. Have you?
No, I have not, but I really want to.
All right, so maybe we should work that out so that way we can maybe give our thoughts on the movie. Do our first Escape the Mind Reviews movie review.
Oh, snap.
Oh, snap. Well, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. If you have liked what you've heard, make sure that you click that like button. Make sure you subscribe. That helps us out a ton. If you're listening to us on Soundcloud, make sure you hit that heart. Make sure you leave us a comment if you like what you've heard. And also, if you'd like to send us an email, you can do so at escapethemindproductions@gmail.com. Want to thank you.
What are your theories? Do you have any corrections? Definitely let us know.
Leave us a shout, give us an email, let us know, and we'll definitely make sure that we share those out to the masses in the up-and-coming episodes. So again, thank you very much for tuning in, and I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your night. For Solus and myself, take it easy.
Thank you, and good night.